All right, so we're going to talk about the associative property of multiplication and also the distributive property of multiplication and show you the difference between the two. So they both involve multiplication, but they're a little bit different. So first one, associative property of multiplication, that just means that you're allowed to rearrange what you're multiplying together. So for instance, here I have -8 times 6a to the fifth. Now it may look like I'm only multiplying two things together, but actually I'm multiplying three things together. I have -8 times 6 times a to the fifth. So I'm really multiplying three things together here on that. So -8 times 6 times a to the fifth for those. So when I multiply, I can just multiply the first two things out front, and that's going to be -48. And then that's being multiplied by a to the fifth. So that's actually it. That's going to be your entire answer. Okay, -48a to the fifth. Okay. Next, this one here, I'm going to do this same similar way. Again, that's really three things you're multiplying together. -5 times 3 times x to the fourth power. So I can multiply the first two numbers out front. So it doesn't matter what order I multiply things in. -5 times 3 is going to give you -15, and we have x to the fourth. Now notice I'm not taking -5 times 3 and then -5 times x to the fourth. I see a lot of confusion in this. Okay, that is the distributive property, which we're talking about next here. Okay, now all this that we're doing, it's all multiplication. So with distributive property, you have a plus or a minus that's inside. That's the difference here. So you're going to do a times b and then a times c. So if there's a plus or a minus inside the parentheses, then you're going to use the distributive property. But if you've got multiplication like we have here, you're not doing that. You're not doing multiply -5 by 3 and -5 by x to the fourth, because the operation inside the parentheses is multiplication. So instead, you want to use distributive property if there's a plus or minus sign only. Otherwise, you're just multiplying out. So here's how the distributive property works. Whatever number's on the outside of the parentheses, it gets multiplied by both things inside the parentheses. So if you have 3 times x plus 4, for instance, you're going to take 3 times the x and then 3 times the 4. So as we see down here, so right here, 3 times the x and 3 times the 4. You get 3x and then 3 times the 4, so 3x plus 12. So let's do that for these next couple problems here. Now, if I have -9 times m plus 5, what that means is I'm going to take -9 times the m, and I'm going to do -9 times the 5. So -9 times both of these. So here's what it'll look like. -9 times m plus -9 times 5, just like that. And I just need to simplify it now. Now, because there's a minus, plus and a minus, plus and minus, I'm just going to turn that into a minus. So it's going to be -9m minus 45. -9 times the m and -9 times the 5. Let's try another one. This one here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply the 2 by the 22y and the 3. So it'll look like 2 times 22y plus 2 times 3, just like that. So 2 times 22 is going to be 44y plus 6, 2 times 3. And these are not all, I should mention that none of these are like terms. That's why I can't do any more with these, because you have a variable and you have a regular number. Those are not considered like terms. That's why we can't combine those together any further. Let's do the last two here. I have -2 times b, -2 times -4. Okay. So I get -2 times b. Okay. And then I have plus -2 times -4. So in this case, I did change the minus sign into adding the opposite, so plus the negative. and I just put the negative and negative together here. Now, -2 and -4 is +8. So I have a +8 right here. So again, if you want to see a little bit more what I did there, I actually wrote it out like, oops, this is a 4. Wrote that out first. Okay, so I have b plus a -4 is how I wrote that. So that way when I multiply, that's how this became a plus right here. Because I took -2 and put it next to the -4. So I have plus -2 times -4, and that's where I got the +8 from right there. All right, so now I'm going to do just one more here. So I have the 3 times 10d and 3 times the -7. So 3 times 10d, and then I have a minus sign there, 3 times 7, just like that. Again, if you'd like to write it out as adding the opposite, you certainly can do that. Okay. But it's going to turn out being negative anyway. Usually the only time I rewrite the negative is adding the opposite is if you're multiplying by a negative. Then it's sometimes easier to see what the value is going to be in the end. But this one, we can just put a minus sign and just simply multiply each one instead. Okay, so then you're going to get 30d minus 21, and then that would be your answer. Again, these are all using the distributive property of multiplication.